boardroom. This is the business of esports. The worlds of gaming and esports are evolving every day faster than ever before. With YouGov's living data, you can probe into the real thoughts and behaviors of esports fans and gamers worldwide. If you're a team, a brand, an agency, or a rights holder, you should be talking with YouGov. They're partners with the biggest names in esports and the biggest brands all around the world, driving compelling results every single day. Check out yougov.com/BOE and schedule a call with YouGov today. From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports weekly news show / post podcast live stream. I am Paul the Prophet Dawalibi. I'm joined today by my friends and co-hosts, the Honorable Judge Jimmy Baratta, and a very, very, very special guest who I'm going to introduce in a second after my intro, Marius Adamnica. If you're new here, welcome. What we do is we cover the most pressing gaming and esports topics and news of the week. We look at all of it through a business and C-suite lens. We dissect, we analyze the business implications of everything happening in the industry. And best of all, on this show, we get to do it live with you guys. You get to challenge us, ask us questions, disagree with us if you are so daring, but it's a safe space. It's a lot of fun. And that's what makes this special. We appreciate all of you being here. If you're a regular here, thank you for coming here week after week. Marius, welcome. Welcome to the weekly news show. Welcome to the live stream.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Marius, just a quick intro before I jump into news and other things. Would love for you to give like the 2 seconds on segev. Segev is just from, I'll give my perspective here, the best gaming and esports law firm in the land. You are the greatest esports and gaming lawyer in the land, and we are lucky to have you. We are lucky to get your perspective. Our audience is lucky to hear from you today, tonight, depending where you are in the world. But would love a bit of the background on segev and just your background, so our viewers know you.
Yeah, thanks for a very kind intro. segev, we're a law firm based in Vancouver, Canada. We're probably one of the only Canadian or really North American firms with a dedicated esports practice. I like to joke that I'm one of 3 esports lawyers in Canada, which is not that far from the truth. And in addition to that, we also do work in tech, gaming, both video gaming and gambling, crypto, and a bunch of other areas. But we do have a very strong esports practice.
That's awesome. And you are here today, to give us your unique legal perspective on a bunch of stories that have interesting. You know, we have this sort of semi-lawyer here before, but now we have the real deal. The real.
We're both lawyers. It's the same thing.
I mean, Jimmy's, he's gone to the dark side or the light side, depending how you want to see it.
Jimmy was smart enough to get out.
I haven't met a single lawyer that told me like, "Oh man, I'm so sorry that you left." You know, everyone's like, "Oh, teach me how."
That's about right.
Bobby says Paul got his mic set up. Yes, Bobby, it is finally. I'm half almost. You still see the virtual background because my room is not ready yet, like the room I am streaming from right now. But the setup's here. Better camera, better audio. I thank everyone for putting up with sort of the little bit scuffed podcasts and live streams over the last few weeks while I've been moving. But we're back. Matt says semi-lawyer, ouch. I'm just teasing, obviously. But we do have a lot of news to talk about this week. And I think it would be good to start with what I consider maybe the most interesting story, and it has a legal angle to it. And definitely the biggest esports story this week. And that's 100 Thieves in the news. And not in a good way. Usually, you know, we had actually a not so positive 100 Thieves story about a month ago where they made some layoffs. And I'm starting to think maybe some of this is connected, but the headline here, guys, I'll bring it up. I'll share my screen here. The headline here, not flattering for 100 Thieves. The headline is, the big 100 Thieves nade shot underpayment allegations and response explained. So this is a streamer, a content creator named Frosty. Aaron Puka claims Matthew Nadeshot Hag ran a predatory org. So Frosty came out and basically laid out this story that they were completely like underpaid at 100 Thieves. They were forced to live in a $10,000 a month house. So he said they were paid $1,650 a month, but they were required to live in a $10,000 a month rent house, which is split among 4 people. So do the quick math here. The rent already exceeded their monthly salary. And that he claimed that 100 Thieves took 95% of their sponsorship income, which is an aggressive split, if true. And basically they could, barely make ends meet. They were often gone hungry. Like, I saw some of his live stream and I read some of his tweets. It's not in this article, but some very serious allegations. Let me just present the other side. Nadeshot did a live stream where he claimed that 100 Thieves only took 35% of the revenue in 2 of the 3 deals, and that they didn't force them to rent this house, and that really it's their fault because they didn't make enough content and they didn't stream regularly enough. So put the blame on them. Marius, I think we throw you in the deep end here, and would love to start with you and understand how you think about sort of these two sides at odds with each other and their disagreement here, and what is what is the potential liability for 100 Thieves here, right? Like, if these allegations are true, is this big trouble for them from a business perspective, legal perspective? How would you break down this fight?
I don't think they're necessarily in trouble from a legal perspective. Assuming the streamer of this here, he was sort of above the age of majority, and he signed that contract. He had an opportunity to get legal advice. It's sort of, yes, it may be a bad deal, a very bad deal, but what it sounds like, but you still agree to that. It's just sort of, you should be careful what you sign, get representation, talk to somebody before you do so. Once you sign it, that's the deal. From a PR perspective, yeah, I think it just looks very, very bad for 100 Thieves. And it sort of brings back like a question I often have is sort of, if you are a streamer and you have your own audience and you're making money out there, how much value do you get from being part of an org, really?
Yeah.
Yes, you get to be like, I get to put 100 Thieves by my name. I'm kind of cool and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, you're the one bringing the views. You're the one who has the audience. And 100 Thieves, yeah, they can help you with marketing. Maybe your following will increase a bit if you're part of their team, probably significantly. But I think a lot of the most successful streamers out there aren't necessarily part of orgs. They're just doing it themselves, and they're doing very well. Like, they have people who support them. They have managers or, 2 or 3 people who help them set up for stream and stuff like that. And they're doing fine about being part of an org. So
it's funny, your take, Marius, is exactly what Trainwrecks said on his stream. Trainwrecks, who has a huge audience, one of the biggest streamers in the world, basically said this kind of proves that you don't need orgs like for these content creators. They don't add enough value, and they're takers. They're not givers, really. Let me just push a little bit here. If what Frosty is saying is untrue in some way, even if it's 10% untrue, right? He fudged one of the numbers or he exaggerated a little bit. Is there a legal case for 100 Thieves to go after him for, essentially like slandering them or destroying their reputation publicly here? Because once it's out there, it's hard. Like you said, the PR is terrible here.
Yeah, I mean, potentially. It would depend, like, if it was, he said 95% instead of 90%, something like that. I doubt 100 Thieves would go after him for that. And, we're not going to get anything out of it. Even if they sue, I doubt he has the money to pay that judgment. And even if he does, nothing's going to happen. It's just going to be probably more bad PR for them. If it was sort of made out of whole cloth and there's a lot of significant inaccuracies out there, I mean, yeah, they would have a case. They could pursue it. And again, I don't think they pursue it with the expectation of actually getting any money back, but sort of just being like, no, we've been slandered. we're taking steps against it. Again, it would be more of a PR move than an actual like legal move trying to get compensation. But
Can
we
I
wouldn't
pitch? Sorry, go ahead.
But once you get into one of those legal fights, it's in the public eye, and there's going to be reports on what happened, and especially if it goes to trial, which it's unlikely to. So you're just causing more bad PR for yourself. I don't think the PR the 100 Thieves wants to go that route.
Can I pitch lawyer versus lawyer here? Like, Marius, you're in the boardroom at 100 Thieves. And they're your client. What's the advice to your client? And Jimmy, you're hanging out with Frosty. He's your client. At this stage, what's the advice to him?
I can go first if you want, Jimmy.
Go ahead, Marius.
Yeah. Sure.
If I was their lawyer, I'd say, maybe this isn't really legal advice, but from like a practical perspective, I would be just like ignore it and hope it goes away. Like there's nothing good to come out of his story. Tell your side of it, then just leave it. Don't get into a back and forth. And 2 weeks from now, maybe people won't really care about the story that much.
Interesting.
In terms of legal steps, I would, if there is something defamatory in there, I'd say maybe send him a cease and desist letter. Try to scare him a little bit into sort of not taking shots at you in public. Maybe works a little bit. But a lot of the time you see people post the actual cease and desist letters they get on Twitter or whatever, and it just makes the party sending it to court sometimes. So that's sort of a double-edged sword as well.
Jimmy?
I hate this hypothetical because it reminds me of law school, Marius, when we had to argue both sides of an issue to get full credit, and you always just wanted to argue the one that you felt passionate about. And I so strongly and I love your point about not needing orgs. That's well taken. I think 100 Thieves is probably more so in the right here. I think this is a young emotional kid that's lashing out, that's making up things or pushing issues beyond where they reasonably were, what they really are. So literally, if this guy is my client, if Frosty's my client, I'm like, you idiot, shut up. Stop doing all of this. One, he's making himself harder to hire for the next deal, right? And like Marius mentioned so many times, so little of this is about justice and right and wrong. It's often business decisions. It's mitigating damages or trying to recoup, unpaid terms in a contract. And for Frosty to do this, I'm just like, do you know how much harder it is to sell your brand when you're now the vocal guy that is criticizing partners and potentially, right? All 100 Thieves have to do is leak the contract, and you'll see that the 35% that Nate Shot alluded to is probably accurate. If that's the case. But we didn't. In the FaZe Tfue thing, Tfue was in the right. The FaZe contract was oppressive in that way, right after that contract got leaked. This is obviously, comparing something 6 years ago, and I'm sure the deals these days are a lot more balanced, but I see a sophisticated party with a lot of VC capital and savvy investors on one side that are running what I think is a very tight ship. Obviously, they had some problems recently with reorganizing their focus and what they needed to do to stay profitable when esports is kind of on the decline, but content is certainly rising. And then on the other side, you just have a bunch of young kids that are making content that have never been a part of a contract, that probably didn't fulfill half the terms required of them. And as Nate Shot kind of explained, are just kind of screwing around and not really utilizing the vehicle that they had in front of them. And if you read a lot of I hate doing it because these are just random opinions from random people, but a lot of the comments that I read on the videos, on all the posts, you have a lot of fanboys of 100 Thieves that are defending them and raising some interesting comments. It's, at the end of the day, guys, it's really a juicy story. If you like the drama, it's a great one to read up on, and I recommend to any of our listeners and viewers to go read the post directly. Go watch Nate Shot's explanation directly. Long-winded answer, I know, for that hypothetical, Paul, but to me, I'm just so frustrated with how Frosty is handling himself because it's not professional, it's not mature, it's likely inaccurate, and exposes himself to what you mentioned as a countersuit or some type of legal action. But whether or not any of that happens at the end of the day, to Marius's point, it's always a PR decision, a business and economic decision, and the only thing that's guaranteed is when you get into litigation, pretty much everyone loses unless you're Johnny Depp, and trying to, protect your image.
Let me just get caught up on comments here, and then I have one more take on this. Adam says, now we just need Jimmy to not sound like he's a radio broadcaster. I mean,
Whoa.
I mean, that's what you're going to get, Adam. Krishna says, thick daddy. I assume, Krishna, you're referring to the thick boy Jimmy Baratta here. Matt says, it feels like 100 Thieves has fallen off in a big way since they said they wanted to make video games. First, they're forced to make layoffs. Now this, just a bad look for one of NA's major orgs. I mean, Matt, my take is kind of a riff off that, which is I'm a big believer that like where there's smoke, there's fire. And 100 Thieves has had multiple kind of missteps. I've said multiple times, I think it's probably being mismanaged. I think there's not enough oversight from the VCs. Like my take on 100 Thieves has been pretty critical of the way it's being run. And I've always suspected that, Nadeshot, even if he's a nice guy and a good gamer or streamer, like probably is in over his head, just given how big the business has become. And this situation, I think, gives me even more confidence in my thesis, right? That I suspect, and Jimmy, this is where I totally disagree with you. I suspect Frosty's telling the truth. I suspect they don't want this contract to come out because I assume it's very much like the Tfue contract, right? Totally oppressive, really one-sided. And I think that is sort of was the state at the time these contracts were signed, right? 100 Thieves was a big brand even then, and they were smarter, more sophisticated, kind of better organized than a random kid who, makes gaming videos. And they knew they could take advantage, and they did. And, you can blame Frosty for signing a bad deal, which he does have to take that blame, right? I think, Marius, to your point, if he signed it, sort of tough luck. But there's a bigger conversation around, like, at some point, there needs to be some oversight of these deals, or at least some kind of, and I'm not a fan of regulation, but at least some kind of, some structure that prevents these things from happening, because it's good for no one, right? Like, this is not just bad PR for 100 Thieves, it's bad PR for the industry as a whole. And I other than that maybe this is the only way that a company like 100 Thieves can be profitable, if they like take advantage of kids. But if that's the case, that's a bigger problem also. They need to be able to survive taking a 20% cut, in my mind. And if they can't, right, then maybe it's not a viable business. I don't know. I think I'm in the minority here. I think you guys both felt like 100 Thieves was in the right here, or did this, or dealt with this better.
I think part of the issue is that, the orgs have sort of all the power in these negotiations too. Like, it's a lot of the time the person signing, it's their first deal. They don't have like 10 different teams fighting over them. If they're just like happy that they got on with an org. So they'll sort of, and I've seen this directly, they'll kind of sign everything that's put in front of them, give me the jersey, or just get this done, especially because they're often very young as well. But I think ultimately, as the industry matures and more people get representation, that's really the answer to this. The issue is, don't sign a bad deal. And, they're both free independent parties. They're free to sort of sign or not sign what they want. Eventually, as people just get representation, get more protection, you're going to see these deals get more fair. And I think you have in recent years.
Yeah. Guys, let's move on. Let's talk about, hey, Jeff, the juice. Jeff, you're muted,
buddy.
I'm all thrown off. I don't even know what continent I'm in. Is my sound okay?
You're great. We're live.
You're just in time for a story that I think is
that whole spiel that you guys just did. Of course, the lawyers were both saying, "Hey, we need more lawyers."
Or 100 Thieves, quickly, before we move on.
I actually have no context on the story. I saw that there was like something going on, some Twitter beef, but I don't know the story enough to comment. So as much as I love hot takes, I'll sit this one out.
Okay. Well, I think this next story is perfect for you here. It's right up your alley, and this one is Amazon and EA in the news. So this is an oldie but a goodie that's sort of come back and made waves literally in this past week. Basically, there were rumors going around that Amazon was going to announce that they were acquiring EA. Now, this is like not new necessarily. Rumors have been circling for a few weeks, according to the article. about a potential EA buyout with Apple, Disney, and Amazon listed as potential buyers. Finally, the rumors sort of all converged towards Amazon. And now the rumors basically, someone has said that that this is not true. Basically, the rumors have been refuted, I think, by both sides, that Amazon is not looking to buy EA or is not buying EA. Maybe they were looking to do it, but they're not going to, according to both sides. Now, whether that's the truth or not, I don't know. But curious to get your guys' thoughts on the rumors here. If you think if there's any truth to this, and what do you make of them coming out and saying it's not true? Like, do you read into that in any way? Do you like the Amazon EA mashup? Whatever you guys direction you want to take this. Jeff, maybe start with you.
I mean, there's certainly been a lot of smoke around EA getting acquired for a long time, particularly, now that we saw Activision come off the board. It's sort of like EA is the next biggest public kind of mega cap target for these larger companies. Historically, whenever this has come up, I've always kind of been on the side that Disney should buy them, because Disney has the sports licenses, like they have the ESPN brand, so this kind of seamlessly fits in. Like you can see them creating, like instead of Madden, it would be just ESPN football if they wanted to move away from the Madden license, but just using that sports brand. And Disney should be making games, right? They have arguably probably the greatest IP in the world, and have just fallen flat on their face as it regards to games for 20 plus years now. They also need a metaverse strategy. I think EA helps them there, a little digital theme park, metaverse. Gaming is the future of that. So I think it would make a lot of sense for Disney. As it relates to Amazon, it's interesting. We always seem to talk about Amazon, but it's not clear whether they they say they want to make a big push. They've made a couple of games, obviously one very not successful, one moderately successful. Some members of this panel said it was going to kill WoW. I believe it did not kill WoW, as far as I'm aware. So on that one, the prophet may not have been right. Shocking, not yet, at least. But what's interesting is that you see the names you see are all big tech names and not platforms. Like it's not Microsoft and it's not Sony. And I think the reason why that's interesting and probably makes more sense for EA is because historically it never made sense for Microsoft or Sony to buy EA, because then you'd have to make the license, like the sports license, exclusive, which always has been tough to make work, whether it's with the deals they have with the leagues. Like I think that would be a contractual issue, and then also just making the math work with that kind of large rev share. So I think it makes sense for Amazon. They certainly have the money, but I think Disney would be the better fit.
What do you guys? I mean, that's an interesting take. Disney's definitely a good fit. I don't know if it's a better fit because of the, Disney has fallen flat on its face in gaming so far, right? So like, some fresh blood looking at it. Amazon does have gaming ambition. They have produced an okay game. But I'm curious, Marius or Jimmy, like, what's your take on the rumor mill around this also? Like, and just, what do you think of, again, because these rumors came from somewhere, and what do you read into the denying of these rumors, like that at least Amazon, I think, came out and said we're like nothing's happening here?
Yeah, I mean, that might just be kind of like posturing, or God knows what's going on internally there on the negotiations. I think probably where there's smoke, there's fire. So there's probably some kind of discussions going on, but we just don't know. I think in general, like, this is just another example of sort of all these tech giants. They're sort of like, they respect gaming. They see that there's like a lot of money to be made, but they're just not quite sure how to get into it. Like, yeah, as you mentioned, Amazon's trying to make games kind of successful. Netflix has like this weird project where Reed Hastings said games are a competitor, and they're trying to like build in these little browser games into their platform. And it's all these kind of awkward attempts to get into a medium that they don't really get. And I think probably if you really want to get into gaming, it makes more sense to, just acquire a big name in the industry and just have them be under your corporate umbrella, which Microsoft with Blizzard, EA, like Jeff said, is probably the next big piece on the board, especially because they might be in a bit of trouble now where they lost that FIFA license, and the economy in general is not doing too great. There's been lots of layoffs.
But do you guys think that the fact that EA still hasn't been acquired is maybe a signal of something, right? Like when an Activision-Blizzard goes for the price tag it did, I would think, right, the board at EA at that point sort of has their bankers having discussions, right? It sets a bar, it sets a multiple. Maybe they think they can go get a big number. You know, the fact that EA hasn't been bought by anyone yet, is that maybe telling? Like, there's a lot of potential buyers, as we all just said, and everyone has made good cases for Amazon or Disney or anyone else, right? Ricky says Apple. Ricky says, nope, still got my money on Apple getting them. I mean, like,
I think this is exactly why their smoke is there. Like, I think 100% you're right that when Activision went out and you saw, Take-Two by Zynga, like just a ton of M&A in the gaming space, I'm sure clearly like any, any good board would do as their fiduciary duty, they probably hired a bank and were like, okay, if Activision's worth, whatever, 69 billion, like, and we're only trading at 28, like, let's see what we're worth. And I'm sure these conversations happened. And to your point, I guess what you're getting at is, yeah, maybe that means that either EA's price is too high or, there just wasn't.
Is there something wrong? Is there something wrong with EA?
I don't think so. I mean, I get what you're getting at, but I mean, what tinfoil hat theory do you have here?
Well, let me bring this up. Let me attach it to another story here. And this one was about the Activision-Blizzard acquisition. And I thought this was interesting. And I'm going to tie these two together. But it was Phil Spencer who came out and said, hey, we bought this basically because of mobile. And, PC also a factor, kind of the, like, appease.
This headline must kill you, Paul.
It does kill me. But
do you buy that? Do you believe that, though?
I mean, I do, because Blizzard hasn't really made a good game in the last half decade. So, there's really no PC gaming business to buy there. But do you think this is why maybe EA is not the same darling? They have a mobile business. Not that they don't have a mobile business, but maybe it's not as strong. Maybe, like, if this is what's driving the acquisitions. Any thoughts there?
Jimmy,
I think the acquisition. I think the acquisitions are more about communities and IP, right? I don't think Microsoft wanted Activision because of the mobile business. I think that was a nice kicker, but I think they wanted it because they want to put Call of Duty on Battle Pass, and then they want a bunch of exclusivities around it. Call of Duty is the most successful selling console title, right, out there. The mobile is attractive. And then with EA doesn't really have that same mobile component. Most of the ones that I've played are kind of trash. I think
you're totally wrong there. I think you're totally wrong. Like,
that's just how I feel, because you're thinking of Warcraft and I'm thinking
of, like, who's on Microsoft's board, right? When Phil Spencer goes to Microsoft's board and says, we're going to make this $70 billion acquisition, and here's my case for it, right? You think he's going, oh, this is about Call of Duty, right? Like, to a group of people who've probably never even played Call of Duty. No, he's saying, look, mobile is like 80% margin business, and there's like 6 billion of revenue from mobile, and this is gonna be completely accretive over the next 3 years for that reason. And he's making I think in my mind he probably made that case, not like hey, think how cool it's going to be to put Call of Duty on Game Pass, right? Like,
he probably pitched the metaverse. Oh, you guys want to win the metaverse? Like, this is how. That's probably pitched
getting a little too crazy with
members. But I think it's a good point, Paul. I mean, it's a
I don't think a single
point.
Sorry, Jeff. I don't think a single person over there.
I actually would agree with Jimmy, though.
I don't think a single person over there hasn't heard of Call of Duty. And you're like, oh, mobile future. No, I think it's, look at this amazing franchise that has a long-standing history of being the best and being incredibly profitable, and all that we could do with it. We've covered time and time again here that the Game Pass is Microsoft's future. It's their main concern, not mobile.
We know that. But I'm saying, what is the argument that was made to Microsoft's board?
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
Subscription,
And Phil
SaaS.
could say that, in the story and wherever he wants, but we know that they didn't acquire Activision-Blizzard because of the mobile business. They acquired it because of the unique IP that they can make exclusive to Game Pass.
I mean, so you think deep down he doesn't believe that? He's just telling the story because that's the right story to tell.
That was my first question to you when you brought up the story. I said, "Do you believe it?" Because I don't believe that. I want to hear from Marius here, unless it's too hot of a take, Marius. But you've been quiet.
No, I'm just kind of like, what mobile business? Like, it's I played Diablo Immortal. It's actually great.
It is.
It gets a lot of crap, but it's not a bad game. But aside from that, and Hearthstone, and I think there's like a mobile Call of Duty. Like, what mobile business? And if you want to, if you want to succeed in mobiles, there's a lot better mobile studios out there you can buy for probably like a way smaller price. What's the studio that makes Clash Royale and
Supercell?
Yeah, I mean,
that's
you want to succeed in mobile,
but that would be a better one.
But it's a great point. He's saying there's cheaper options out there. You don't spend
100%.
$70 billion for the smallest mobile component of Activision-Blizzard, right?
Exactly.
It's a great point.
I bet you Penny Pritzker has never heard of mobile or Call of Duty.
I bet you any of them have never played Call of Duty. None of them.
I bet you all of their kids play Call of Duty, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's the thing my son is always on."
All right, let me get caught up on comments here.
It's a pretty good board, though. I mean, obviously it's Microsoft, so not too surprising.
For our listeners.
Not surprising for the second largest, whatever company in the world, or probably the largest.
You should explain this for the listeners. Paul has the board of Microsoft up on the screen, so we can critique them.
Matt says I'm not critiquing them. I'm just saying they probably bought into the SaaS story, the mobile story, the margin story, not the oh my God, how great is it to have COD on Game Pass? That's all. It's not. They clearly, I think they made a good decision. So regardless of how they got to it, the decision's a good one. Matt says somebody buy EA so that sports video games can start being made well again. Yeah. I mean, that is maybe the problem why no one's buying EA right now. Ricky says either Apple or Google if they really don't want Stadia to die. I mean, I think that ship has already sailed, Ricky. I'm pretty sure it's already dead. I don't think they want to spend like 30, 40 billion or whatever EA goes for just to revive Stadia. Adam says, if you're looking for what's wrong with EA, Battlefield was pretty bad. That one hits me hard. But Adam, you make a good point. Ricky says, maybe EA is too big / historical in the gaming space. If Disney does buy them, EA would only make up for Disney regretting shutting down their game studios. Interesting. What do you guys think of that? Is EA too big for a Disney?
I mean, I don't know the relative market caps currently, but I mean, I don't think so. I think Disney's like 100 billion, maybe, and EA's 30. So I don't think it's that crazy, but
yeah, I'd be really surprised. I think Disney's like way more significant than EA.
Yeah, Disney's a $200 billion company, so that would be very reasonable acquisition size.
EA to Disney makes the most sense to me, more than Amazon.
Ricky says Disney's also mainly family friendly. EA not really. I mean, the sports games are, right? Like
we got ESPN under.
EA has also The Sims, right? That whole franchise.
Yeah. I mean, I don't unless you're just completely against shooter games, it's not like EA is like that. It's like Battlefield. I don't think Apex or Battlefield are that inappropriate.
Ricky says play Battlefield Mobile. Jimmy would, Ricky. Has
anyone played Apex Mobile, by the way?
Apex Mobile is awesome. Oh my God, because I play with that mobile controller that you got me, Paul, and I just slap so hard. I'm getting like 20 kill games. I'm so good.
Probably playing bots.
Probably, but it's great for my self-esteem.
Have you spent any money on the game?
Not on mobile. I've definitely spent money on my PC for like cool skins and stuff.
Yeah. The heirlooms get me on PC, Jeff. The stuff where it's not coming back. That does it for me. That
FOMO.
I know. Matt says, I think mobile's the future in other markets. Seems like console and PC dominates LATAM, North America, and EU. mean, not really, Matt.
Not
to be
LatAm,
honest.
I don't think, right?
Yeah, definitely not LatAm. North America is maybe the closest one, just because of console here. But I think everywhere else, mobile's still quite dominant. All right, guys. Adam says Jimmy is bullying the Apex Mobile community. Yes, that's what Jimmy does. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about. Let's actually stay on this. I want to do this Amazon story. Sorry. And this one is interesting because it's a little bit about innovation in the gaming space. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this, guys. It says Amazon's adding voice-powered gaming to big-name games with Alexa game control. Now, I don't know if this is going to sway your thought on the Amazon EA rumor, but supposedly Amazon wants to have like voice-powered games or allow players to play games using their voice. So supposedly Dead Island 2 is going to be the first game to be compatible with what they're calling Alexa game control. And so it'll give users an accessible hands-free option and a new tool that they can use for more interactive gaming experience. And it's going to be made available to developers, right? So developers can sort of plug this into their game. You will need an Amazon or Amazon Prime account to use this. And obviously it's like push to talk, right? You don't need to say Alexa or anything like that. And you don't need an Echo device. You don't need any kind of Amazon device. It's built into the game. Now, whether this means Amazon's listening to you, I don't know. This is not mentioned in this article. But I'm curious what you guys think about voice-powered games, or at least voice-powered functionality in games from Amazon. Marius, maybe your thoughts on this?
I'm curious if this is sort of being marketed as like an accessibility product, or it's actually meant to like add to the gameplay. Like, you know, I'm playing with my controller and I can also yell stuff at the screen, and that'll also input commands. Like, if it's the former, I think, you know, it's great. Like, we can always use more accessibility. In terms of the latter, it just seems like one of those things that might be a great idea in theory, but I don't know if it really adds that much. I don't know how you'd play a lot of games by voice. Like, if you just go like left, right, shoot, like it doesn't seem very practical. Like, so it's,
you're like yelling reload at the screen constantly.
Yeah, maybe for some, you know, like adventure or puzzle games, it makes sense. And yeah, if there's people who can't play with controllers for whatever reason, then that's awesome that we have this. But I don't think it's gonna, you know, revolutionize the industry or anything like that. If it's, I think we've had this technology for a while, and somebody would have done something with it before now if it actually added something to a gameplay.
That is a good point. Jimmy, any thoughts?
I mean, I haven't probably used a light switch in 4 or 5 years, ever since I set up all of my bulbs and everything to voice command. So if there's a way that technology works in the gaming space, I'm not sure off the top of my head how great it would be, or how it would. My one criticism, I guess, because again, I'm big fan of the tech. One criticism is that Alexa always tries to sell me things. You know, it's like, oh yeah, you know, here's your reminder, here's the weather. By the way, you could buy this crap, you know, and I'm like, I, you know, can do without the shameless plugs. More so just interested in the robot butler kind of element of it. So looking forward to seeing how it works here. Again, very open to that possibility, to the integration of the Alexa brand with gaming. I just yeah, hopefully it's not you know, it doesn't border on the selling element of. So again, maybe then Google comes in, maybe Siri comes in. I don't know, but yeah, I'm all for it.
I mean, I buy the accessibility argument, but you guys really think this is going to make the games better? Like, have you ever tried to get to a customer service agent on like a voice, like, you know, like you're literally yelling, like the comprehension is still not that good. And even if it is good, I'm not sure how that makes it more immersive or the game better in some way.
I'm waiting for games I can control with my mind. Give it 20 more years. I'm sure Elon Musk will come up with something. In the brain. Yeah, get the Neuralink going.
Neuralink, that's it, right?
Yeah.
Elon wants you driving your car and playing games all at the same time. with Neuralink. Jeff, sorry, you were going to say something.
No, I think Marius hit it right. For accessibility, I think this could be interesting and maybe, just help get more people who aren't able to play games to be able to play games. So I think obviously I'm sure we're all for that. In terms of this revolutionizing things, I'd say I'm pretty bearish, like we all have said. But the voice games I think there could be interesting form factors for voice games that have nothing to do with like console and fidelity. Like I could see if you're having a dinner party and you want to play like a tabletop type, or not a tabletop game, but like a trivia game or something like that, where having an Alexa in your kitchen while everyone's sitting around drinking wine, like and you're just playing a game on the Alexa. I could see that being interesting.
I mean, they did that, but that didn't really take off, right? They did try that. They did have It's niche, right? And it's sort of like it's not convincing that. Like you could do the same thing with just putting a laptop on the table or an iPad, right? Like it's not the hardware piece isn't that convincing. I think the only interesting part of this story to me is like interesting that technology companies fundamentally, which is what Amazon is, are thinking about integrating tools, like creating tools for developers. I think that's interesting, right? Like I think one of the big trends is how much simpler game development has become over the years. And I say simpler not in terms of cost or resources or people, but like there's so many more tools readily available. You don't need to build your own engine. You don't need to build your own, social stuff or in-game stores even, right? There's a lot of companies that provide these tools. Interesting to see Amazon thinking about infrastructure in that way, because they've totally dominated infrastructure just in the tech world, right? Like when you think about almost every website runs on Amazon Web Services in some form or fashion, right? Like interesting that they're thinking about infrastructure in my mind. And I wonder if this is not telling of a bigger strategy. Maybe we see, they have a game engine, right? They have, what was it called? Lumberyard or whatever. Maybe we see a bigger suite of game development tools from Amazon that allows you to really accelerate development and run it on Amazon Web Servers, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's an interesting business there. Ricky says, "Rip Cortana." I mean, Cortana was kind of already dead, Ricky. And I mean, it's like you might as well go back to Clippy at this point. And JM says, "Horror games with background noise, courtesy of Alexa." That's interesting, right? Like tying the game maybe you're playing on the PC to the Alexa or Echo speakers you have in your house to create some kind of extra ambiance or, more immersive experiences. Maybe. That's an interesting thought. Ricky says, maybe if Amazon can't make games themselves, they can provide the material for other independent studios. I mean, Ricky, your great minds think alike. I mean, this is exactly what I was thinking here. Any thoughts on this, guys, before we move on? I want to get to...
Yeah, I want to say I fully agree with that. I mean, ultimately, we're talking about all these tech giants trying to get into games. Game development, ultimately, it's not really a science. It's sort of about catching something in a bottle. You don't know when the next successful game is going to come from. And it's not a problem you can just throw money at and hire the best devs and they'll come up with the best game, because it might not. Like look at New World or any other attempts by that. So trying to make games may not be your way in. But doing something like infrastructure or supporting things in that way, that's definitely more like consistent with what Amazon's good at. So yeah, entering the industry that way, I think probably makes a lot more sense.
That's an interesting way of putting it, Marius, like in the sense that are they self-aware enough to stick to, in some ways, their lane, right? And do infrastructure, which I think we all agree could be very lucrative. Or like, do all of these big tech companies get tempted by wanting to make their own games? Like, it seems like the temptation's strong, regardless of your good point, which is like, it's not a sure thing, right? You could make a good game, people may not play it. You could make a bad game, people won't play it. There's a lot of subjectivity in that sense.
Yeah, it's like movies or books. It's it's an art. It's not a science. So you can't buy a hit, sort of. So it's kind of a knee-jerk reaction. We're going to get into gaming. Oh, let's make games, but maybe not the best approach. Yeah.
Jeff, you were going to say something?
I was going to say sometimes the people who are best positioned to build the infrastructure are actually like the ones who have built the content, and then they just create the infrastructure they needed, and then they make it third party. So like I'm thinking Valve, I'm thinking I guess Unity. I think Unity may have actually started as a content play. They've long since like gotten rid of it, but this is actually fairly common. You're seeing it a lot in Web3, where now like the blockchains are starting to create content. So maybe that's a little bit of the reverse, but yeah, it's not always as easy to create the infrastructure if you don't necessarily have, you don't know in-house what is needed because you need it for yourself.
Fair. Yep, I buy that. All right, guys, let's talk about Valorant. Actually, let's talk about PS5, because I think there was an interesting PS5 story, and I want to get your takes on this if you agree even. But the headline here caught my attention. It says, Analysts predicts PS5 price increase will have, and this is quote, direct quote, will have minimal impact on sales. So this is an Ampere analysis, believes Sony won't revise its sales forecast because of pent-up demand. What they're saying is, so Sony made the difficult decision to raise PS5 prices in Europe, Japan, and parts of North America. Not the US, though, not yet. And what this analyst has said is he thinks the price increase of 10% will have minimal impact. I guess basically no impact on sales of the console. They shipped 2.4 million PS5 units during the first financial quarter, which is less than Sony had expected. But they're not changing their forecast, which is 18 million consoles for the fiscal year. So they think there's pent-up demand, and I guess they think relatively, what is it, price inelastic? Where, you know, if they raise the price 10%, it's not going to change the demand for the console because people have been waiting to buy it. What do you guys think of this? We talked a little bit on a previous live stream about the price increase on the Oculus headset, right? The Quest 2, which they were raising the price $100, which is significant. And I think we sort of agreed that was probably a bad move. What do you guys think of this price increase and this analyst's view on it?
I mean, 10%, not too bad when you consider that they can't get enough of these out the door, right? And that people want them. But I thought also the price increase was only in a select few countries. The United States was not affected.
It's
so
not.
Correct me if I'm wrong there.
45 markets, not including the US.
Right. So that's also kind of interesting to me that they chose these other regions where either they felt they could squeeze a little bit more out of them, or maybe their communities would be less vocal against a price increase. Curious the reasoning behind choosing one country over another. Yeah,
I have a tinfoil hat thesis on that. Do you think it's because they're facing the most competition from Microsoft in the US?
Yes. Yes. No question.
Maybe it wasn't that
controversial. That's tinfoil. I mean,
yeah. Yeah.
No question, it's the most competitive market. Marius, your thoughts on this?
I mean, yeah, I think ultimately it's supply and demand, but it's clearly a lot more demand than supply, and when that happens, it makes sense to increase the price, even though people are going to complain. Like, I think, just in broader terms, it's a bit ridiculous, but it's been like more than 2 years, I think, since the PS5 came out, and it's still really hard to get them in a lot of places. And it's a bit disturbing what's happening with supply chain, that it's actually that hard to make tech products anymore, and probably like a bigger problem overall. But I think this is sort of unavoidable. Just, again, I don't think we're going to lose very many sales at all out of this. There's still way more demand out of supply, and that's what happens.
Where is that? Is that the point where the two, the supply and demand lines cross? Right, in my mind, is sort of the interesting hypothetical conversation. Like, is there a world where people buy $2,000 PS5s and they can get away with this kind of pricing because there's pent up demand and they can't make enough of them? And like, is there a point at which consoles struggle? In my mind, all of this is a little bit foreign. And let me just go back 1 second. Like, console was always the low cost alternative to a PC, right? You could get a console for like $300-$400 and you could be gaming. With consoles, like even without the price increase, I mean, like a Series X or a PS5, you were talking like with the controller and everything, like $700-$800 at least, right? Like $800, most of the bundles or whatever. I mean, you're in like budget PC territory at that point. Is it really this price inflexible or inelastic?
I mean, yeah, I'm sure there's people who would pay $2,000 for PS. I'm sure there's people that have to scalpers and all that stuff.
True.
But I mean, ultimately, the thing that sort of gets me about this price increase is that I think the console makers, their strategy is not to make money on the consoles. Like they just want to get as many of them out there, and they make their money on the games and the licensing and all that stuff. And the fact that they sell these at a loss, I think, even with a price increase they do. But the fact that they still decide to increase the price at this point, I think they're just like, look, we literally can't get these out the door fast enough. We're still going to sell them out with no problem whatsoever, and it's really an issue. Like,
that
it's surprising they can't make more. I mean, that's my concern.
Marius, your thought here got me. Here's my tinfoil hat theory. You got me thinking about a real tinfoil hat theory here, which is we did a story last week, and actually I wanted to bring it up because having you on the show, you have particular insight on this. But we talked about a story last week where PlayStation was hit with like a $5.9 billion lawsuit for people claiming that they were ripped off on digital games, like claiming that the 30% cut that Sony takes on digital purchases is what drives or keeps the price of the games high, and therefore they're being ripped off.
So class action.
And so is there this tinfoil hat theory that says if Sony thinks they're under some pressure there where they will have to change that cut from 30% down to 20%, whether it's because of this class action suit or because of just general market pressure and, Tim Sweeney saying they're a monopoly every week or whatever it is, right? Like, do they think if that 30% goes down to 20%, hey, maybe we can't afford to lose money on the consoles anymore? Like maybe it's not the Razer and Razer Blade model anymore, and they need to make money on them?
My guess is still no. I mean, my guess is even with the extra $100 per console, like their ideal scenario is not to make an extra $100 per console. Their ideal scenario is just to get twice as many as these out there and sell them. And even if your license revenue is 25% instead of 30%, I think the math works out. You still make way more money just getting these to as many homes as possible. Again, I think it's more the issue that why aren't they making more PlayStations if the demand is there? And
Ricky says that analysis was predicting the bots buying them up. I mean, that may be true and still true. All right, guys. Any other thoughts on this before we move on? Jeff, did you have thoughts on this before we?
No, I think Marius and Jimmy, Marius kind of summed it up.
Can we talk about something else? Another supply and demand story, I think. And this is a Valorant story. And the headline here: Valorant Champions tickets go live. Grand final sells out in half an hour. So this is tickets for the entire playoffs of Valorant Champions 2022, including the grand final, which will be held in the Volkswagen Arena in Istanbul, Turkey. The tickets went live at 9 a.m. With the Turkish Valorant account sharing the first link. Other links were tweeted out just a few minutes later, and within the first hour, everything was sold out. Tickets are now being resold at obviously higher than their original price. But here's my question to you guys: what do you think is the force at work here? First of all, it's great for Valorant, obviously, right? But is this a Valorant story? Is this a Turkish gaming and esports fans story? Is this an esports story in general? Like, what do we think is the driving force behind? Because I was surprised by this, I'll admit. I didn't think Valorant was this, had this rabid of a fan base yet to be able to sell out this quickly for an event in Turkey, right? It's great, right? I'm sure the arena is beautiful, but it's also not New York City, right? And so I'm curious what you guys think of it and what is the underlying story and force here. Jeff?
I mean, number one, I think, Turkey, I don't know their audience from a PC console perspective, but actually it's one of the biggest regions for mobile development. Like you wouldn't believe it has like a vibrant mobile gaming ecosystem. So Peak was there, which Zynga bought, Rollick, which Zynga bought, Dream Games, which is valued at $1 billion. So I know they have this culture of gaming. Like there's a lot of mobile development that takes place there. So that might be one element of it. And then I feel like every time we talk about Valorant, like maybe we're just underrating it because every time we talk about Valorant, it's wow, it's doing better than we thought. So it turns out maybe like at some point we need to like recalibrate our thoughts on just how Valorant's doing. So I don't know. Those are my two thoughts.
Marius, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think just overall, it's good news for esports. I think you're going to see more and more of this. There's that whole a few years ago when esports was like the hot buzzword, and people were like, "Oh, it'll be grasped by 2050. It's going to match traditional sports and all that stuff." It's not going to happen overnight. I think people were like expecting things to switch like that, but I think you're going to keep seeing events set out like this, and you're going to see arenas getting sold out more and more, especially as the kids who are sort of into gaming right now grow up and they're still continue following gaming in a fundamentally different way than adults do now. So yeah, I think it's good news.
Do you guys like in terms of recalibrating, do we think it's a geographic issue though? Like have we underestimated the popularity of Valorant outside of North America? And maybe just Riot in general, their ability to drive create hype and drive usage or play outside of North America. It seems a lot of the times where we're surprised, it's a story that's not a North American one. I don't know if there's a trend there or a takeaway there. Jimmy, you were shaking your head.
No, I mean, I think it's a good point to think about Valorant outside of North America, to think about the strength of certain certain markets in the FPS community, right? You look at Counter-Strike, for example, that's so popular in so many regions outside of the United States. We have a tendency to focus on North America always, just because that's where we're located. Well, some of us are located, Paul, but with Counter-Strike, still massive popularity in Europe, in Eurasia, in South America. And when you look at Valorant, which drew from Overwatch audiences, communities, and Counter-Strike communities, makes a lot of sense that it's having a popular, that it has a popular result in other regions as well. I think this is a great win for Riot. This is a great story, and also a great win for Turkey, obviously, too, to show that it has a thriving esports community, that it's part of the mix, that it could sell out in such a quick time period, such a quick turnaround. I mean, anyone that's jumping on these live events right now, are especially in a game like Valorant that's still relatively new to that type of public esports circuit, they're doing it at the right time, right? Because this is something that's going to come back next year and the year after, and Turkey's going to be a recurring destination for it. Think of it like Formula One, right? And all the different Grand Prix that they hold, or any other tennis or golf kind of circuit, right? You're establishing yourself as a premier destination in a new sport, in a new league. And it's a huge win, not just for Riot to show dominance in regions that you might not originally think of, but it's equally, if not a larger win for the country of Turkey, I think, and for anyone else that's going to have similar success or a similar result.
Yeah, it's again, I wish we knew. I wish there was a way to know, right? Is this a Turkey story or is this a Valorant story? But I guess time will tell, right? Like next year, if grand finals are somewhere else and they don't sell out in an hour, maybe we can start drawing some conclusions. But it's a success for Riot nonetheless, and that's, I think that's maybe the overarching story is they continue to succeed at this esports thing, maybe more consistently than anyone else, which is interesting. Antonio says, where there's tickets, there's scalpers. Not that special. I believe this to be true for any major event, music, sports, etc. Antonio, no question.
Yeah, but you can't just say that because the scalpers only buy if they expect there to be demand, right? So it's like,
True.
I don't know. It's a valid point. That's why it sells out like in 10 seconds or whatever. But like, they don't do that for every event. Like if I just hosted like a ping pong tournament at my house and tried to sell 100 tickets, like it's not going to automatically sell because they're scalpers. Maybe that's a
I,
terrible example.
I would
I
scalp
get your.
them.
I see
I
Antonio's
would buy
point,
them
but
up and resell them, Jeff.
You're a good friend.
Guys, before we get to the last story, I just want a couple of things, actually 3 things. One, on the podcast this week, I forgot to mention at the beginning, we had Crowd Create, amazing company, amazing marketing agency in the gaming and Web3 space, gaming, crypto, and Web3 space. So a lot of interesting insight on the intersection between gaming and crypto. So definitely tune into that when it drops this week, probably on Friday, as usual. Also, don't forget, if you are looking for a law firm in the esports space, gaming, entertainment, all of these things, Marius and Segev are the people to be talking to. Again, I'll put segev.ca in the chat, but go check out the website. And if you're at all, Marius, I think you can be found on LinkedIn easily, right? And Segev on the website directly, people can contact. And then, as always, guys, this live stream very generously supported by YouGov. YouGov produces data on gamers, games, esports fans all around the world. It's what they call living data. It's constantly being updated. So if you're looking to address that gaming audience, reach that gaming audience, which is very lucrative, you absolutely want to be partnering with YouGov and with companies like law firms like Segev before you go in, because you don't want to go in alone. You want to go with experts. So if you want some free data, because we've done some YouGov Insight segments where we highlighted some of the data, gaming data that YouGov produces, you can go check out yougov.com/BOE and definitely show YouGov some love. We any of us, myself, Jimmy, Jeff, if you want to reach out to Segev or to YouGov, you can reach out to us also, and we're happy to make introductions. So we appreciate, Marius, your support, and we appreciate YouGov's support. All right, guys, last story here I wanted to talk about, because I was watching Twitch and this came up, and I thought it would make for an interesting conversation. And the headline here is about AMD, and it's not so much the headline that I wanted to talk about, but the headline here is AMD launching what it claims is fastest processor in the world for gaming in September. What is interesting to me about this story is normally I would go to YouTube to watch these kind of launches, right? So 2 nights ago, they had a live event. They live stream it on YouTube to announce their latest and greatest product, right? In this case, a processor for gaming, or particularly good for gaming. And instead, I watched this because I had tuned into one of the OTK streamers. I can't remember. I was watching SFan or Mizkif, one of those guys. And all of a sudden they stopped what they were doing and they're like, hey, we're going to watch this AMD live stream. And I thought, well, this is different, right? Like, I didn't think they were real techie nerds like this, that they want to watch a CPU announcement, because it is pretty technical. And only at the end, only 15 minutes in, that I realized, wait a second, this is an ad, right? Like this is actually sponsored content. Like AMD paid these streamers or these orgs to have their streamers watch the live stream and comment on it. So I want to get your take on this, guys, what you think of that. But let me just add my color, because maybe it'll create some discussion here, which is, I was actually really disappointed. Like, I'm really into the techie nerdy part of all this, like the differences in, instructions per clock and those improvements and the architectural improvements of the CPU and things like that. These streamers knew nothing about tech. Like, really, were not tech savvy at all, could not comment, intelligently on anything they were watching. So the bigger question is there a limit to what influencers can push? Like, we have huge respect for OTK and what they've accomplished, but is pushing a CPU that they don't understand the right move? Like, is AMD sort of throwing money at the wrong platforms? Sorry, that was a lot. Let me get your thoughts, guys.
There's always, I think, when you're talking about marketing campaigns and how you activate influencers and what influencers agree to get paid to do, there's always, and I know we throw this word around a lot, and we've definitely criticized it on the show, there's always an element of authenticity, right? Where if you don't know what you're talking about, you probably shouldn't be talking about it. You probably shouldn't take money to talk about it either. And that was, I think, where, for some of the panels, Paul, that you've been on that I've listened to, you always preached more so authority, right? Where an authority figure is someone that knows what they're talking about because they've done that in business, in life, or, in one capacity or another, is going to be the person you listen to, because they're not just a person of influence with an audience that might like a brand, but they actually know the difference between, what this AMD processor does that the Intel competitor doesn't. And I think this is kind of funny, Paul, because I think I sent you a story similar to this about an AMD processor about an hour or two ago. I'm an AMD fan, but I would never take money from AMD on a live stream myself to talk about it, because I'm just not a tech savvy person the way you are and the way you would appreciate those stories. So clever, I think, to rope in some influencers that can watch a live stream. We've seen streamers and creators used in similar marketing campaigns, right, where they're just utilizing their audience and drawing attention towards the release of a product, or the release of a new game. But again, you're drawing a fine line here when you're bringing people that really don't know AMD from Intel and asked to kind of comment why one is better than the other. It's going to backfire, not just for the company that's paying that for that marketing campaign, but also for the influencer that kind of gets exposed for not having that expertise or knowledge, where the future campaigns now are less likely to be as successful because they've kind of abused the trust of their audience. And I think that's the one thing that we heard from Crowd Create, and one thing that we've known from other agencies that we've talked to and worked with on the show. It's always, about that fit, right? Because if you do something that's not true to your brand, in any community, but especially in the gaming community, it's going to get exposed quickly. And this is a very vocal community that will let you know that they don't like that.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, yeah, Jimmy, as you mentioned, authenticity is definitely huge for these things. And I think a lot of it is about deferring to the streamers. Like, I guarantee you it was none of these streamers' idea where AMD came to them saying, hey, let's promote this chip. None of them say, oh, I should live stream your launch announcement. Like, nobody wants to do that. They should have gone to them and said, look, we want to stream this. How can we fit this into your broadcast or your streaming in a way that sort of makes sense, that's going to reach your audience? And they would have come up with something better than, just kind of top-down knee-jerk, like, let's stream the product launch. So that's probably like a new way brands have to learn to interact with streamers. Just defer to them a little bit on how to market this stuff.
Mary, so your comment makes me think, have streamers, the big streamers, right? The big influencers and content creators that have tens of thousands of people watching them for hours on end, have they become like the Super Bowl ads of the gaming world, right? Like, where it's just like, whatever it is, doesn't matter if we think it's a perfect fit or not. They're just so big that, we can throw advertising dollars at them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it worked to some extent. Like, when you have so many eyeballs watching you, like, just getting your name out there, it doesn't matter how it works. Like, there's some effectiveness. Just you can probably make it work better by crafting the message sort of more effectively as well.
Yeah. Jeff, your thoughts on this?
I mean, I don't have too much to add there. I think authenticity is important. Having said that, getting in front of eyeballs is important. So depending on who you're looking to target, like someone like yourself who actually knows what they're talking about and probably already has an opinion on the product, like maybe that's not the target that these influencers are really going to actually get. But I'm sure if there were a lot of people who were maybe less technically savvy and just kind of were like, oh, that's cool, like this streamer is watching this, like, now I've seen the product that I may have never had exposure to because, I don't read these high-tech blogs. I watch streamers. And then B, it's like hearing the layman talk about it. Even if you, Paul, know that like that streamer is kind of full of shit, the person who's their target audience actually may not. So the advertisement may work in and of itself. So maybe I'm more bullish than the rest of you guys on it.
I just want to, I missed a couple of comments here. Antonio says, I read that the K-pop band EXO sold out in 0.2 seconds, 66,000 tickets. Not even a second. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you're making the comparison of sort of music versus gaming, but whether you sell out in 0.2 seconds or half an hour, I don't know if we can draw any conclusions from that. Yeah, I mean, any other thoughts on this, guys? But that does bring us to the end of this show. I will say a couple of things, couple of housekeeping things, guys. Don't forget the podcast this week. Don't forget to go reach out to Marius, reach out to Segev. Again, these guys are the absolute legal experts in this field, right? You do not want to go to a law firm that does not have specialization in gaming, esports, entertainment, etc. So absolutely recommend everyone listening to this, watching this, if at any point in your career, in your life, in your your time in this industry, you need good legal advice, highly recommend Segev for that. Also, don't forget, guys, follow Business of Esports everywhere, on Twitter, on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, you name it. On every platform, we have content that you guys maybe are not getting or not seeing if you're not on all those platforms. So make sure to follow us everywhere. Thank you to all of you, to Jimmy, to Jeff, Marius, especially thank you for coming on today. Thank you to everyone in the chat who added value in their opinion. We appreciate all of you. Don't forget, every Wednesday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time, we do this show. And it's fun because you guys are here. And the most important thing of all, guys, don't forget, the future is fun. We will see you all next week.